No worries. So, good evening, everyone. Hope all of you are keeping well and safe. My name is Anjali Vajpayee, and I will be your host for the evening. A very happy new year to all of you. So, finally, we are in 2021. What a roller coaster year 2020 has been. So, the only good thing I feel happened in 2020, apart from Take It to Your Network, bringing to you these webinar series about your health, is that we have attained a balance with our time, and we know that we get to know that things can be managed from home and they can be managed productively. So I think on that note, let me all get you all familiar with today's topic and the structure of the webinar. So as far as the structure of the webinar is concerned, Dr. Meenu Ahuja will be taking all of us through her presentation at first on today's topic. Plus, to make the session more interactive and two-way, we have kept few polls for all of you to attend so that we have an idea about your flow of information around the subject. We have kept a dedicated segment at the end of the webinar for your question. So all your questions are going to be answered indeed, but at the end. So now coming back to today's topic, why PCOD and PCOS is common in India and importance of women health after the age of 40. So I was just going through online, surfing around, and I came across this statistic that 1 in every 5 women in India are suffering from PCOS. So indeed, it is a fearful number, and we thought it is a need of the hour to address this topic, and hence we are here for today's webinar. Now, in order to understand the in and out of the PCOS, we have Dr. Meenu Ahuja with us today. So let me just introduce a bit about Dr. Meenu Ahuja. So Dr. Meenu Vashisht Ahuja pursued her MBBS degree from an esteemed institute, Stanley Medical College, Chennai, in the year 2001. She did her diploma in obstetrics and gynecology in the year 2004, also from Stanley Medical College. She was a consultant OBGYN at Jaipur Golden Hospital, Delhi from the year 2013 to year 2017. In the year 2017 to 2018, she had the opportunity to gain overseas experience and pursued physician observership at California, USA. She's currently a visiting consultant at the Fortis Hospital, Shalimar Bagh, and Jaipur Golden Hospital, Rohini. She's also handling her own private practice at Sector 4, Rohini. So welcome, ma'am. It's a pleasure to have you with us today and speaking around on this very fearful subject. Basically, it's a stigma in our society today as well. So a
Not
very
make it that, Anjali. Let's not make it that. That is the agenda of the talk. So thank you for having me over.
surely, ma'am. Before we start, let me just quickly launch first poll for the day so that we have an idea about the flow of our audience as well around the subject. So I would request backend team to launch first poll for today. To all the attendees, you'll be seeing one poll and request you to actively participate in the same. So let me just quickly read out the question to you. Are you experience irregular periods quite often and still ignoring the same? Poll would be visible for another 15 to 20 seconds. Request everyone to participate. Let's just end the poll and share the result, please. Backend team. Sure, ma'am. Are you able to see the result on your
Yeah, I
screen?
can say some 38% seem to have some irregular
Yes.
period.
Yeah, and ignoring the same, whereas 62% have never experienced it or have taken a steps in order to control the same. So, ma'am, over to you. You have the flow.
Okay,
Uh,
right. Let's get
yes.
going. Yeah. So let's have this out of there. Yeah. So good evening, everybody. The topic, as has already been introduced by Anjali, is PCOD or PCOS. Why is it so common in India? I'm sure many of you who are already into the webinar are here because probably you have it already, or somebody has told you that you are a PCOD patient, or you probably have a doubt that you are one. So I can't seem to.
Just ma'am, share your screen. You are sharing the screen, right?
I'm already sharing the screen, but
Just
why is it that I can't?
double click on it.
Yeah. Okay. So, and the other topic would be what health issues women can face after the age of 40, but we'll deal with that later. So first, let's go to PCOD or PCOS. So the PCOS and PCOD is one and the same thing. There is no difference. There's only a technical difference, which we doctors have to know. You don't really have to bother. So the first case that was ever, detected in the annals of history was 1935. And the incidence is very high, as Anjali very rightly said, 1 in 5 women, a very simple figure. South Asian population as much as 50%. And it doesn't really, you can't say that it's only young women who are affected by it. It starts there. It starts showing symptoms when you're in adolescence. It can go on to the time that in your reproductive age group, even can have manifestations in and around the time of your menopause. So this is a disease spectrum that if you don't tackle, it is there for a lifetime with its manifestations. So yes, it is definitely something that you have to take care. Now, what are the causes? Now, why is it that some of us have it and some of us don't? One is genetic. Genetic, of course, as the word tells you, is passed on by your genes. Now, genes which control probably the production of insulin, or genes that control the formation of the follicle. Follicle is the formation of the egg in your ovaries, okay? And so those genes can be impacted. So that's why sometimes if a mother has PCOD, the daughters may also have PCOD. So this is how, like, there is a genetic component to it. Then if in utero programming, now what does this mean? So while the baby is still in utero, okay, and if the mother has PCOD, the hormonal milieu of the mother is going to impact the epigenetic programming of the fetus, and that can later lead on to her having a PCOS when she grows up. And obviously, the intrinsic part of PCOS is the hormonal imbalance. The technicality, if a little bit, I'm going to dwell upon later, not right now. So that is a component there. Insulin resistance, although your body has more insulin, but your body is resistant to the insulin. So that will cause the various symptoms of PCOS. And very importantly, environmental factors. Now, how environment? If you're not eating correct, your food is bad, that is your environment. You're not exercising good, that is your environment. All that leads to weight gain and obesity, and ultimately you end up getting all the manifestations of PCOD. Okay, so that said, says this is what for the general public, this is enough to know that you are actually prone because something is there in your genes, something is there while you're still in your mother's womb, something is there because of your own, doings, that you're not eating right, you're not exercising right.
Yes, ma'am. So just wanted to stop you there. As you mentioned that eating can hamper this, eating can have a drastic effect on us, and we
Yes.
can it can lead to PCOS. So is there any particular kind of diet that we can follow, or particular kind of food that we can avoid?
We're going to come to that in detail later.
Okay.
So let's just move on with the presentation, because I have kind of a section where we deal with the diet also.
Sure, sure.
So now how can the patients, what all problems can the patients have? Now, if it's a young girl, she's in her adolescence, she may have irregular periods. The mother may say, okay, she's gaining weight, she's got lots of acne, the facial hair is more. And sometimes, women, girls can say that we are having hair loss as well. So this is what, and obviously young girls are very particular about how they look. That is the age to look good and, feel good. So all these things are going to be very detrimental for her psyche. She's not going to feel very good about herself and life in general. So this has an emotional aspect to it as well. Having said that, then, as I said, this is an ongoing thing. If you don't take steps to rectify, once you're married, you want to have children, it's going to impact there too. You will again, the irregular periods will continue, and you may end up not even conceiving. So infertility is again a big thing with PCOD patients. And even if they conceive, sometimes they're prone to having miscarriages, problems in their pregnancy. So all that is also likely. And this, it doesn't actually end with this. Once you're in the relatively older age group, the perimenopause or the menopause, this is going to result into chronic illnesses. So your diabetes, hypertension, dyslipidemia, all these and the various cancers you will be prone to. So this is like starting from the very beginning for a woman to the end of her life is going to be impacted if she doesn't take corrective measures. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if we as doctors, now how do we, now somebody just tells you that you are PCOD, not now, don't really, kind of get worried, and don't at least kind of have this fear psychosis, because there are certain criteria we as doctors use to label you or put you in that category. And please actually don't go by labels. It's not done. Approach your gynecologist, ask her if this is what it is really for you. Why? Because see, we see three criteria. Clinically, we have to see, the clinically means that when we seeing you in the clinic. So
Yeah.
are you overweight? Do you have acne? Do you have, uh, any excess hair? Something called some pigmentation around the neck, or something is called acanthosis nigricans, those features. So first we kind of look at you, the physical appearance of a woman would be assessed. Then we look at her BMI. Okay, BMI is your height, and we have to assess your height and weight, and then the ratio is the BMI. So then we have to look at your BMI. And also then after this, what we are going to ask you, your history. We're going to ask you how your periods are. Okay, so your periods, if they are being regular, if there is a long gap, if you are having a heavy flow, if you're having a scanty flow. So this is going to be the clinical assessment, the history taking. Then we will obviously write you certain tests. So in the tests, if it throws up some abnormality in terms of your androgen levels being high, your insulin resistance being shown in certain tests by which we called OGTT. So there are like basically what you need to understand as patients is that for us criteria would be seeing you clinically, taking your history, certain lab tests which will be abnormal, and finally an ultrasound which will show us that your ovaries are polycystic. Polycystic means multiple small follicles or cysts in your ovaries. So that will be the criteria for us as doctors to ultimately diagnose that, okay, this patient does have PCOD. And as I said, PCOD ovary affects the ovary, and it is a syndrome which is not, it is beyond your reproductive years, goes on to the other extreme of the age. Only thing is that young versus the older age group, the manifestations or the symptoms are different.
Yeah. So it is not age restricted.
It is not age restricted, definitely not. If you don't take corrective measures, this is going to give you different symptoms and continue, with the different set of problems all the way till your older age. Okay.
Okay.
So definitely this has to be dealt with in a very streamlined approach.
Yeah.
Now, obesity. Obesity is definitely one of the very important features in a PCOD patient. Okay, and more than 50% of obese patients can have PCOS, that is women. Okay, and once you have obesity, that means excess weight. Okay, and usually what is more important here is the fat that you have, the abdominal fat. Central adiposity is what we call it, because that part, the fat in your belly. Okay,
Yeah.
because usually the fat distribution in women is such that it's around the hips, but if it comes on the tummy area, this is insulin resistant. So what happens is that your body is going to be secreting more insulin to try and handle it, but still your body is not going to respond to the insulin. And this insulin in turn is going to make the male hormones rise, that is the androgens. And these androgens will ultimately, cause all your ovaries not to kind of, release the egg, which is called anovulation, and all your menstrual problems. So
Yeah.
what I'm trying to tell you people is that weight is the central, gaining weight is the trigger. So
Okay.
by, you many a times patients tell us, I have gained weight. It's because I'm not getting my periods. But it's not like that. It's the other way around. You're not getting your periods because you have gained weight. लोग कहते हैं मेरे को जो है ना, haven't you heard it, or probably I'm sure all of you have this
Definitely.
misconception
Yeah.
कि जो है मेरा period नहीं आया इसलिए मेरा weight gain हो गया है. But it is the other way around. Okay.
Weight gain
So
हुआ है इसलिए periods नहीं आ रहे.
yes. So even if probably you are not a PCOD patient, even in such patients also, a weight gain can cause the periods to become irregular or
Yeah.
have a prolonged, interval between their periods.
Yeah.
So this, as I said, I just explained why this happens. तो आपके सबके लिए थोड़ा technical हो जाता है. But as I said, what happens is that you're gaining weight. That is your central adiposity, which is going to be resistant to the insulin because insulin levels, but to kind of handle it, insulin or release aura in your body. But
Okay.
that insulin is going to cause increase in your, because it kind of, there's something called a, hormone binding globulin that goes down, androgen levels or the male hormone levels go up, and these cause the ovaries not to produce the normal, ovulation. That is, the egg is not released, and so multiple small follicles are there in your ovaries. So it is a very vicious cycle, and this is
Yeah.
all interrelated. So as I said, obesity is one of the things I've just explained to you. Now let's go on to the other features that we see. Menstrual disturbance is something that I just told you. Why that happens is also something I told you, because your ovaries are not going to release the egg. Why
Yeah.
does menstruation happen? Every month your ovaries release one egg, and if you are not married or you're not planning a baby, it's not going to get fertilized, so
Okay.
ultimately the lining of the uterus has to shed. So that's the normal menstruation pattern. Okay, but a woman who is a PCOD patient, why will she not have a period? Because the ovary is not releasing the egg. Okay,
Okay.
and the ovary is full of so many eggs. They're just sitting there, but that is why you don't get your periods, because there is no ovulation.
Yeah.
And because there is no ovulation, only one hormone is predominating, estrogen. Okay,
Okay.
normally in a woman there are two hormones that come into play mainly: estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen in the first half, progesterone in the second half. So we need both of them. If
Yeah.
estrogen, as in this case, as in PCOD patients, it's only estrogen which is kind of being there continuously, that if it is going to be there for her whole lifetime, it is going to ultimately lead to some very dangerous changes in the lining of the uterus, which will predispose her to endometrial cancer on the long run. So hence
Okay.
you see that, ultimately it has got far reaching consequences. So you having PCOD is not just about good looks or looking good in your adolescence or your younger years. So, and so you've got to realize that whatever steps you have to take right now. And steps,
Yeah.
of course, we're coming to later.
And
This is
and
not
as
long.
you correctly said that and as you correctly said that it's a longer process, मतलब एक limited age पे खत्म नहीं होता है, so it is going to be with us for the rest of our lives.
Yes, so
Yeah.
therein we are going to talk of lifestyle modification, which you
Hmm.
have to learn to adapt for the whole of your life. Make it a part and
Yeah.
parcel of your life forever. Okay.
Yeah.
The other manifestations you can see in such women is hirsutism. Hirsutism basically means a lot of facial hair, or hair where there should not abnormally be, like the front of your abdomen, or because women normally will not have hair here. So there are certain criteria we have in, gynecology, how we assess the severity of hirsutism. But again, that is not for you people to know. That will be too technical. So basically, whenever a woman but complains of excess facial hair, she will obviously be going for cosmetic procedures, and she may be rather troubled by it. So, and sometimes even cosmetic procedures may not really be helping her.
Yeah.
Then acne is another thing that will help, and male pattern baldness. Now, why does this happen? As I said, the hormone levels are more in such women. So
Yeah.
these bring out, and your hair follicles around your face, they are going to be obviously, having a higher level of the male hormone. They will have more facial hair. Acne is also because of this. And some women also complain of hair loss. This particular sign that we look for is acanthosis nigricans. What it means is that there is, there is an insulin resistance. So if we get a patient, and she is like a stocky build, short neck, and there is like a pigmentation around the neck area. So that clinches the diagnosis for us very easily. Okay, she is definitely PCOD. As I told you when we started, that we look at the
Yeah.
clinically, we look when the patient comes to us, we ask their history, we look at them clinically, then we order the blood test. So this is how a doctor ultimately comes to a final conclusion, seeing her ultrasound, and then we say, okay, you fit into the category of a PCOD.
Yeah.
So this is another one of the things that we look at. Now, this is what, like, usually lots of you girls would have gone for an ultrasound and you would have this report. Okay, I'm being told I have but this simply just having an ultrasound with, having these multiple cysts that you see here, around here. Now, this alone cannot be a criteria for you being a PCOD. You may not have other features. So just because you have a ultrasound which says that your ovaries look like this doesn't put you in that category.
Yeah.
Okay. But this is also definitely one of the things that we look at, coupled up with her symptoms and her lab reports.
Yeah.
And obviously nowadays the labs all have, you know, their fixed packages. They will have already a PCOD package, and they will give you a lot of these tests all in one package. So but I would again suggest to you that rather than, you know, going on your own and getting them done, because you may be a certain subset of, you know, there are again different phenotypes, or let's say subcategories of PCODs also.
Mhm.
So in some patients, as I said, the acne or the you know, hyperandrogenic component may be more there, like acne or hirsutism. In some, you know, the weight issue may be more, or in some, the irregularity of the periods may be more. So accordingly, leave it to your doctor that, you know, when she sees you or he sees you, they assess as to what is wrong and what category you fall in, and then get your tests done. And there is a long list, as I just put in here. There's TSH, prolactin, the hormone testosterone is seen, DHEA, 17 hydroxyprogesterone. All this is kind of technical and not for you guys, but this is just that obviously we have to look at the various components that go haywire. All of them have to be corroborated. So accordingly, we will send the tests. But I would like to make a mention here that OGTT and lipid profile, this is something which even young girls, adolescent girls, if they really fit into the category of PCOD, this is something that should be done for them. But many a times, maybe our community, that is doctors, I would definitely prescribe to you. But I do not know if you, as I just said, if you go to the lab and get yourself done, they may not include this. And hence why I say that, you know, just don't go and get it done on your own. Rather approach a doctor, get yourself proper assessment, and then go for your lab tests.
Okay, so I would really like attendees to pay attention and make a note for this. I think it's very important that we all know.
Yeah, and so as we are saying, how do we, you know, what is the strategy to handle this problem?
Yeah.
Lifestyle modification is the thing. So this is what should be the, you know, what do you say, the commitment to correcting this disease is that yes, you have to be committed to a very good dietary habit, a very good exercise regime. Other than that, whatever problems you have will obviously be time to time, if they at all troubled you too much, they will be dealt with by your doctor. But these two things are the main strategies in handling your PCOD. They correct the entire abnormal hormonal milieu that is there because of you having this syndrome or this problem. Okay, so everything normalizes once you start incorporating the lifestyle modifications. Now
Definitely.
what lifestyle modifications? Dietary. Now this was the question that you had for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So diet, very, very important. And when patients come to me, I think I really spend a lot of time. Half my consultation goes actually for a PCOD patient, or even for that matter, infertility patients, is how I advise them, you know, that dietary and exercise. I spend a lot of time on that because that helps immensely. And that is how you spearhead the management of your PCOD.
Yeah.
So what all you should know: you should not be dieting. Dieting doesn't help. You know, a simple agenda, this again is a favorite of mine. I explain to all my patients, you know, eat your breakfast like a king, your lunch like a prince, and your dinner like a pauper.
Yeah.
So your body is tuned such that that is how the calorie, because obviously your activity, you know, is maximum during the daytime, and gradually, because before you sleep you wouldn't really need a lot of calories for the night. So that should be
Yeah.
your lightest meal and should be easy to digest. And why should the breakfast be good? Because it is breaking your fast. You slept the whole night and you've got to start your day, so have a good breakfast.
Yeah.
So no dieting, no skipping meals, but yes, avoid junk food. Eat good homemade healthy food, which should have a lot of green vegetables, lot of fruits, lot of salads. Now and incorporate nuts, flax seeds, chia seeds, stuff like that. We all know and we are all
Yeah.
very aware. But
Yeah.
point is, when it comes to execution, we fail there because we don't have the commitment, or we probably sometimes even don't have an insight. that also is likely that, you may hear, you may think it is all fancy, but then you don't really follow it. So,
Yeah.
and yes, avoid, lots of you girls, women would be, kind of working and running helter skelter, or all staying by yourself. So you don't really focus too much on, just pick up something from the, your malls and stuff, and then ready to eat packaged food. But that also is a big no-no. Rather stock your, rooms with, or your kitchens with fruits, and, lots of salad stuff, that and nuts. So this is really going to help you.
Yeah.
Another thing I'd like to talk of about here is that, you have to space out your meals, and rather than, what do you say, overloading in one meal, you have to kind of make sure that there are so many, methods of dieting and stuff. I'm not going to go into that, but I keep it very simple for my patients that, how, why the Japanese are the fittest people, their portion size is very small. So when you, that is where you actually can help yourself a lot, and I've personally experienced that. So make sure that when you sit down for a meal, it should have a good combination of, roughage. Where does the roughage come from? Again, salad, fruits.
Yeah.
Carbs should be a certain limited amount. Protein should be more in your diet. Okay. So, like, let's say, for example, you start your lunch. I usually, again, this is something I tell all my patients, and if there are patients who joined in here, they would know that's how I counsel. So when you start your lunch, let's say, start with a bowl of salad. Okay. Finish your salad first, because normally what you are going to be doing is that you will have everything, and you'll have a few pieces of salad along with your food, and you will say, I had salad, and it will just end up being like some 2-3 pieces. So
Yeah.
make sure that you start with a good bowl of salad, and then maybe, most of us Indians will either eat chapati or rice, but make sure that is like chapati should be just moderately sized, not huge ones. Okay. And but you should also have your veggies or your dal or whatever. So this is how you have to make your meal wholesome and complete and well balanced. Okay. Dieting, as I said, is a big no-no. You should not be lacking on nutrients. You should not become deficient in, vitamins, minerals. So that is definitely a big no-no. No dieting, but managing your meals properly. Another mention I'd like to make here is that, something called xenoestrogens. So
Okay.
we have to avoid, because there are so many contaminants in our diet these days because of the times that we're living in, especially the plastic containers containing BP and stuff like that. So try and eliminate as much as you can. And we all know, and we are following that, try and eliminate use of plastics. Okay. Because these, have certain chemicals called xenoestrogens, which mimic the natural estrogens, and then they again alter the hormonal milieu.
Yeah.
So this, if you kind of, and obviously your milk can be steroid loaded, and the pesticides may have these xenoestrogens, but whatever you can, you have to eliminate. So best is that wherever you can minimize, try and make those alterations. And one of the big ways to go about for it is that you don't use this non-stick cookware, and don't use plastic containers.
Yeah. And good luck everyone to explaining to their mother that we cannot use plastic anymore. Otherwise, mothers have this habit. My mom has this habit of keeping the plastic ka dabba intact. So I get in arguments with her a lot. Ki please इसे फेंक दो, इसे फेंक दो.
Yeah,
Plastic
yeah.
is not good for
So
your
I
health.
think we should go back. Initially, before plastic, we had steel, right? Steel was a
Yeah,
big
see,
failure.
yeah,
So it's all coming
that's
back. Steel and glass is what we should be using.
yeah,
So try and do away with as much as plastic as possible.
yeah,
Okay. So foods like, again, what should you be avoiding? Gluten, dairy, alcohol, sugar, highly processed carbs, coffee. And what should you be having? I just told you, chia seeds, flax seeds, fish,
yeah,
eggs, like more of protein, more of fiber, spinach, raw guava, berries, food which is rich in antioxidants, and stuff like that. So we all actually are pretty intelligent. We do know that all this is good, but only thing is about, as I said, application
yeah,
in our daily lives. So that is like, we are talking of mindfulness these days. So you should be mindful even in your eating.
definitely.
So just, as I said, smaller portion size and a good balance of everything.
Yeah,
Now here, I don't really want you to look at what the big, rice triggers and polycystic. This is not really my focus in this slide. My focus is just to tell you what I've encircled there,
Yeah.
that all parts of India roughly have, um, a high incidence of PCOD. And probably why rice they probably mentioned here is because it is high on carbs. Though I personally wouldn't really target rice to be, one of, because even it's not that you don't see PCOD in North India. North Indians are basically wheat eaters, but you can't really, kind of put a finger and say that rice is the culprit. No, I wouldn't say that. I didn't really put this slide here for this reason, but for the fact that, as you can see, it is practically the incidence is the same. East India, West India, North India, South India. I mean, if they say that East India has got a higher number, even South Indians eat a lot of rice. So I don't really see that why the rice should be the culprit. But my agenda of giving you this slide here is that all of our regions across the board, our country does have a pretty much high incidence of PCOD, and which I said, of course, genetics, okay, and your environmental factors, and what all I just told you quite some time back when we had started. So that is all contributory. Now, this, of course, as I said, have frequent small meals and full of lots of greens, lots of homemade fresh food. Normally, the calories that you should be consuming, a young woman who's, let's say, like 5 feet 4 inches, she'll average her calorie intake would be 2,200 to 2,400 kilocalories per day. But in case you want to lose weight, which is the case in most PCOD girls, you will have to reduce your calorie intake as well. So it will have to be roughly like, let's say 1,500. If you kind of reduce it by, let's say 500 to 700 calories per day, you can lose about, 0.5 kg per week. So that's a good figure to kind of register with you. So point is that obviously it is all about how weight is obviously a good balance of what you're consuming and what you're burning.
Yeah.
So if you think that you're not being able to burn as much, you have to reduce your caloric intake. But definitely, even if you're exercising, even then you should definitely focus on reduction of your calories.
Definitely.
But definitely don't when you say starve yourself, which I've already told you, and don't let it be there be any imbalance in your diet. There should be a balance of all nutrients. Okay. So as this figure shows you that carbohydrates will always be more in your diet, because you need that to, kind of have that ready available fuel. So actually carbohydrates are like 45 to 50% of your daily intake. Protein, maybe like 20 to 30%, fat about 10 to 20% or so. So this is how roughly we should kind of break up our diet.
Yeah.
But yes, carbs, in the carbs, make sure that you're not taking the highly, highly processed carbs. Those should be avoided. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, diet, I've driven home the point. Now let's come to exercise. Exercise is again a very, very big contributor to PCOD maintaining good health. It improves, obviously the entire hormonal levels are going to improve if you start exercising. The insulin levels will be better. Your, definitely your periods are going to be on time. All the symptoms are going to show a change. And the exercise pattern has to be a mix of, aerobic, cardio, and resistance or strength exercises. And try and obviously do exercises which you can incorporate in your daily lives. I mean, because probably doing gymming is something that not everybody may fancy or may not be able to follow. So why not follow a regime which you can easily do at home? Let's say if somebody finds it easy to do yoga or do dancing, let it be that.
Yeah, definitely.
Because if you probably don't have time and you have to rush to the gym, you may skip it. So rather, why not do something which you can easily do at home? But if you enjoy gymming, yes, please go ahead, do it. If you have time, please go ahead and do it. And this slide also, of course, talks of, the fact that we should try and, create a group, so that kind of gives us the enthusiasm to kind of continue with our exercise regime. That of course, if you can, please, that's going to be even good otherwise, because I'm sure it's great, for women to bond with one another over exercise. It's another very good thing to do. So yes, and long-term lifestyle exercises maintenance will improve the symptoms of PCOS and obviously reduce the risks for long-term complications, which we spoke of before. Okay. Now, what all exercises can be done? Brisk walking, cycling, jogging, whatever is feasible for you. But these are obviously a lot of options that you have. And as I said, a combination of cardio and strength training. Yoga is a very good one. People say, the breathing exercises you have and holding the butterfly pose and all this really helps. So yoga is also very, very beneficial. And obviously, depending upon what your weight is, what your BMI is, if you are like, it's not that lean girls cannot have PCOS. Even thin girls can have PCOS. But that doesn't mean that if they're thin, that they should not be exercising.
Yeah.
So lots of you who will probably be in the audience today, maybe lean or maybe okay weight, but still probably you've been told that you have PCOD. So as I said, even for them, eating well is going to be important, and it is going to be important that they maintain some kind of a physical exercising regime. Okay. So, and of course, obviously, if you are kind of overweight or if you're obese, then you will need more exercise. Goes without saying, common sense, right?
Yeah.
So this point therein to tell you that obviously the weight or the will dictate as to what extent of exercising you're going to be doing to correct your PCOD. Now, what will be the goals of exercise? Or rather, what will, sometimes people are really discouraged. Okay, I've been exercising, I've been doing anything, I don't really see any change in my weight. I know sometimes some people do have that problem. So to tell them, that yes, maybe the first thing that will happen probably will be that there'll be a reduction in the, waist circumference. There'll be loss in inches.
Yeah.
That probably, you start feeling that, your clothes are fitting you better. So that may be the first sign. There may not really be a change on the weighing scale. You may say, okay, I'm still the same 68. Where is the weight showing? There's no reduction in my weight. I'm not happy with this exercise. I'm not happy with this diet that I'm following. But no, one thing is perseverance. They have to continue. And as I said, this is not for, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. It has to be a lifelong thing. And even if, let's say, you are not showing a reduction in weight, there will definitely be an improvement in your hormonal profile. There will definitely be an improvement if you get your OGTT done. That is your, OGTT means glucose tolerance test. So if you get that done, it will definitely show an improvement. And if, let's say, nothing is really encouraging you, maybe just that sense of well-being, after you've done exercising, the release of endorphins, that itself should be enough, stimulus or enough encouragement for you to continue exercising. I'm sure so many of you girls would have some kind of an exercising regime, and it really rejuvenates you. So if not for anything else, that should be the, target.
Yeah, but just would like to stop you here. I have seen multiple questions in the chat box. I would request everyone to be patient. We will be taking questions at the end of the session. Ma'am, continue.
Okay, so this is just to tell you as to how you can quantify your exercise. For moderate weight loss and prevention of weight gain, minimum of 250 minutes per week, moderate intensity, or 150 minutes per week of vigorous intensity or equivalent combination of both, and muscle strengthening activities involving major muscle groups on 2 non-consecutive days per week. Now that's a little complex, but just to say, or let's put it very simply, what I usually tell my patients is, as one thing is according to the weight. So if you're, let's say, a lean PCOD, maybe just 20 to 30 minutes of some form of exercise 5 to 6 days a week is good enough. But if you are on the heavier side, you definitely need about 45 to 45 minutes to 1 hour of exercising. Okay, again 5 to 6 times a week. So as I said, every day and forever is what you have to learn to do. But I'm sure obviously that it's not that, rain comes, sunshine, whatever, but there can be times that you may not do it. You may be unwell, but point here being that make it a big lifestyle change and forever for life. Okay.
Sure.
And obviously minimize being sedentary. You should always be moving around. Lots of you would be IT, or working in MNCs, so you have a lot of sitting involved there. So what can be done for you guys is that, you probably stand and you have standing workstations. Even standing is going to make you lose some calories, right? And then probably take a few walks, or probably you have stairs in your offices. Please don't use any lifts. So use your stairs. And if you can kind of wherever possible, you have to kind of make sure that you are constantly engaging yourself in some physical activity, taking, like, obviously we all have these watches nowadays wherein we track our steps. So 10,000 steps per day is ideal, and it can include activities of daily living and 30 minutes of structured physical activity. Okay. So, and of course, as I said, these two were the mainstay, but if you have other issues, they have to be dealt with medically. And of course, you have to reach out to your doctor for the same. So menstrual irregularities, abnormal heavy bleeding. So we have certain medications for that. We will obviously tell you. Now, oral contraceptive pills. Now, many of you young girls would be skeptical. Okay, we are being told to take oral contraceptive pills. Now, that may be a big taboo in your mind. And maybe the mothers also. Oh, our girl, she is being asked to take oral contraceptive pills. What is this? But why oral contraceptive pills? Because these have two hormones in them. And as I said, your body hormones are haywire in PCOD. Now, to counter that, we have to give you this. So oral contraceptives are actually used in multiple, symptoms in gynecology. So this should not be really a taboo. But yes, if the girl is very young, let's say a girl who's like less than 16 years of age, we would not really want to give them oral contraceptive pills for cycle regularization. So, but if definitely, yes, she's in, more than that and the cycles are extremely irregular, then we can go ahead and give them for 3 to 6 months. So this is a normal routine practice with gynecologists for handling your menstrual irregularities. Then obesity or you being overweight. Of course, as I said, diet and exercise, there is no alternative to that. But in case still, the woman is having issues and she's not being able to handle it, so we have to give them certain drugs called insulin sensitizers. One is metformin. Now, again, a lot of people, oh, this is given for diabetes. How? I mean, they feel kind of, again, very shocked that the doctor is prescribing metformin to them. But metformin is obviously because you also, as a PCOD patient, even your problem is something like a diabetics. You have insulin in your body. It is being secreted more than the baseline for other patients, but it is not acting. Your body is resistant to it. So you need something to help you so that the circulating insulin can work. Okay. So especially it is used in patients who've got a high BMI, who are insulin resistant, who have a family history of diabetes, or their glucose tolerance test comes out to be abnormal. So these are the patients where we use it more often. Then myo-inositol preparation. This is, lots of patients, there are so many other medicines also that we prescribe. Now this is, I'm not giving you any commercial name here. I'm only giving you the chemical in the drug. So the myo-inositol preparation again, this one is ionositol is something which is derived from the B complex vitamins, and it is important for utilization of insulin or the action of insulin basically. So this again is important and can be used in PCOD patients and is used in fact by us. Now, acne. Acne, of course, is another thing, troubles a lot of girls. Not always again associated with PCOS. Not every acne in a woman can be associated with this. Okay. But definitely lifestyle changes will again be the mainstay of handling. Plus, this will obviously, the dermatologist will have more of a role for treatment of acne. We usually refer our patients who have a lot of acne to our dermatologist colleagues. Obviously, we can give them certain oral contraceptive pills again, which will help them. But other than that, all the retinoids, the various gels, salicylic acid, or the various therapies of chemical peeling or whatever else is done by our dermatologist colleagues. That is not dealt with by the gynecologists.
So it is basically not necessary that if a woman has acne, she must be having PCOS. So it is not necessary.
Not at all. Not at all. See, when you are in your adolescence, you anyway get acne because that time the hormones are, going a lot of change, So
Sure.
that time having acne is very normal. And but otherwise, if it's a persistent thing for you and you see other features also which indicate that, as I said in the initial, when we had started out the presentation, I told you we look at 3-4 features. So clinically, plus lab parameters, plus the ultrasound. So just having one thing is not going to make you a PCOD patient.
Yeah, surely.
And then hirsutism. Hirsutism is that excess facial hair or excess body hair for a woman. Again, lifestyle changes will also be very, very important. The other things, cosmetically, we will, anyways, she will reach out to, her parlor, have all those cosmetic things done for herself. But other than that, we can give her oral contraceptive pills, then anti-androgens, certain local creams. Eflornithine is one cream which is used, and laser therapy, electrolysis, again offered by the dermatologist mainly.
Yeah.
Okay. So now this was what an adolescent usually goes through. Now, when we come to the reproductive age group, that is the time that women want to start their families. So, what does PCOD do there? PCOD is very, very problematic and really kind of becomes a big issue for lots of women. It is contributory in a big way to infertility.
Yeah.
Because I did tell you that the egg never gets released. So when the egg never gets released, how is she going to get pregnant? Okay. So right from the time, that the ovulation doesn't happen, and if it happens, it's going to be a poor oocyte. So fertilization may not happen
Yeah.
because the hormonal milieu is so altered. Fertilization happens, the implantation may not happen. So at every step of the reproductive, cycle, or rather the steps that ultimately make you attain a pregnancy, everything is impacted because PCOD is it's not a kind of just one thing. As I said, so many hormones are thrown out of balance in this.
Yeah.
So but definitely I should tell patients that they should not lose hope. It doesn't mean that all PCOD are going to have infertility. No, again, depends on the severity, depends on the kind of phenotype. So some PCOD patients may conceive very easily, okay? But yes, if the married life has been long, your periods are extremely irregular, and you're extremely obese, already those signs are already there for you that your periods have always been irregular and you're really on the heavier side, then maybe quite early in the marriage you can be proactive about seeking treatment, okay? And if you are a young patient, you can still wait. But if you are, let's say you get married late, a woman who gets married, let's say at 35, okay, she should not really, even though what the paradox is that, the PCODs, ultimately when we take them for fertility treatment, once we help them, they're capable of forming much more eggs than the others, okay,
Yeah.
because already they have a lot of pool. But by themselves, if they don't budge, they don't budge. So women who are having infertility per se, if their age is more and they get married late, then they should seek treatment earlier. But if you are young, then obviously try the lifestyle modifications and all the various, the dietary changes, and obviously approach your doctor. It is always best to be proactive if you already know of your condition. But if you are probably young and you are doing the lifestyle modification steps already, then you will probably not need a lot of help to achieving a pregnancy.
Yeah.
Okay, and but point is again, they make such a taboo of this in their minds that sometimes the stress is so much that even that prevents them achieving a pregnancy when maybe the issue is not really as big. So this, of course, is the underlying thing in most infertility couples. The anxiety levels are always on the higher side, and that actually prevents them from achieving a pregnancy.
Yeah.
So but again, as I said, don't really make it too big in your mind. Approach your doctor on time, get yourself analyzed, see how severe the situation is, and depending on your age and the severity of a PCOS, what best help your doctor can give you. So treatment modalities, lifestyle modification. Again, if you're on the heavier side and you have an element of higher insulin resistance, you can be given certain drugs for that. That is your metformin or your myo-inositol preparations can be given. And as I said, these patients don't really release their egg. So they have to be helped with something called ovulation induction. That is, there are certain medicines we have which will help them, the egg to grow and finally rupture. So these can be, there are certain tablets, so which are called, I just put them in certain categories. Tablets, injections also can be given. But we usually start with tablets for patients who, let's say if the patient has been married just for maybe 2 years, okay, and she's less than 30. And when she comes to you for the first time, you're not going to tell her that, okay, no, I'm going to do an IVF for you. No, we don't do that.
Yeah.
When a patient comes to you, she's young and she's not had a very prolonged married life, and PCOD is the only thing. So you will start with lifestyle modification. You'll give her some, tips about the exercise, diet, and start her on insulin sensitizing agents and give her tablets to help her form better eggs. Lots of you would have taken them, clomiphene, letrozole. These are the few commonly used ones. So that will help them form their egg and ovulate and achieve a pregnancy. If, however, this is not helping them, that is also likely that we give them these medicines, they don't show a response, they don't end up achieving a pregnancy. Then we have to kind of increase the tempo of our treatment. We have to go on to giving them gonadotropins. These are certain injections. And that, of course, only an infertility specialist can kind of guide you with what kind of dose needs to be given, what kind of preparation has to be given. Okay. So then there is something called laparoscopic ovarian drilling.
Okay.
It's not routinely done these days. It used to be done quite aggressively before, but not as much these days. But there's some term that maybe some of you would have heard. So basically, it means that, laparoscopically we go and make little holes in your ovaries with the, some kind of energy, like let's say thermal energy or whatever. And so that basically we're trying to reduce the androgen levels in the body, because we are kind of destroying some of the cortical area which releases the androgen. Now I think I'm making it too complex. So basically it is a laparoscopic procedure which will help people with PCOD, but is not done too much these days. Okay.
Okay.
Then IUI, IVF. Ultimately, if people don't respond with, let's say, just simply us giving us tablets or giving injections, we may have to offer them IUI. What is IUI? Intrauterine insemination. So herein, what we do is that we basically, again, will give them some injections to have them form their eggs. But at the same time, we are going to prepare the husband's semen in the lab, and a concentrated and the best sperms will be chosen and will be injected directly into the uterus.
Okay.
And finally, IVF. IVF, of course, is extensive in terms of the treatment, the number of injections that will be given to you, and the steps of, we pick up the injections are given so much that both your ovaries become full of eggs.
Okay.
But the beautiful part about doing IVF in PCOD patients is, this is what it is, that, you kind of can create so many eggs. And ultimately, we have to go and do a procedure of ovum pickup. We pick up all of these by ultrasound guided procedure. And we are using a needle to go and pick each of these eggs, and we keep it in the lab. And we make it kind of fertilize this with the husband's sperm. And then, because there's so many, we can cryopreserve them. Because let's say if normally, we don't really get as many, there are normal patient would be called a normal responder, but a PCOD patient is a hyper responder. So the injections that we give in IVF for her is going to end up making a lot of eggs. And these, because they're going to be so many, we can kind of keep them for future use. Because not every IVF attempt will end up giving you a positive pregnancy result. So the good point about PCOD patients is that they have this capacity of forming so many eggs once IVF is done for them, which is not the case in other patients. Or let's say, as I said, normal responders. Okay.
Okay.
But not PCOD patient, to kind of make it more clear for you people. So ultimately, these are the modalities we will follow in a stepwise manner.
Yeah.
Okay, this has to be stepwise, and people who have PCOD and infertility don't have to lose hope. And it's not that, it's they think that you go, no, we will never be able to get pregnant. We have so many technologies today to help such couples. And as I said, first line, second line, and ultimately, obviously, IVF. But not that every patient who is you don't have to get scared that, oh, my future is going to be IVF. No. So many of you will be able to conceive on your own. So many of you will probably need varied help from the doctors. Okay. And definitely, if infertility is something that is troubling you, you should not really wait on it for too long, because as the age increases or as the married life goes on, then you are actually diminishing your chances of getting pregnant, be it PCOD, be it any other reason. Okay, so that is something all of you should know. But you should not be scared that, okay, I am labeled as PCOD, I'm not going to get pregnant, I am, it's going to be a problem for me. No, please don't go with that mindset.
Okay, so it's not necessarily mean that if a woman is experiencing PCOS, she is not able to conceive. It's not
This
like
is
that.
not a universal rule. You can't
Yeah,
make a statement like that. As I said, it
yeah,
will all depend as to how severe a PCOD is. Okay,
definitely.
it all that's what I mean. The moment that you plan or you get married, okay, and you know that, okay, your hormones were always bad and your periods were never really coming on time, then you have to be more proactive. Maybe like you are like in your 30s, 31 or 32, you get married. So then you should not be really waiting for 2-3 years, let's start a family after that. No, then probably just give yourself some 6 to 8 months. And if you're not conceiving within that time, provided you are following the diet, you are following your exercise, you're keeping everything in check. And obviously, I would always say that if your hormone levels are bad, you already know that, and your age is on the higher side, do approach your doctor even after 6 months of your marriage, so that they can guide you at least with the basic first few steps. Because many
Yeah,
of my patients just conceive like that. Okay,
yeah.
so like lots of them do know that they are PCOD, but you tell them that no, that just do the basic, exercise, diet, and the few insulin sensitizers if they need to be added, and they beautifully conceive with just that. They don't need something more. So it all
Sure.
depends. As I said, if you know your situation is bad and you're on the higher side of the age bracket, then be more proactive. But and if your PCOD is not as bad and you're a younger patient, you can still wait.
Yeah.
IVF also can kind of lead to a certain, it can be a little tricky for your treating physician, but don't really have to dwell too much on this. This is more for the doctors. I think I will not really. But as I said, IVF is a good option and is the ultimate option that we can offer such patients. And these, I don't think I really need to tell you much about this. This is more for the doctors. You wouldn't really understand much about this.
Yeah.
Yes. So, but you should know a few things. That because you were a PCOD patient, as I said, you will always have a tendency to form more eggs. So, this first line says propensity for an exaggerated ovarian response. So, you will, with the same drug, you know, as
Hmm.
you may give to another non-PCOD patient, you will end up forming more eggs. Sometimes this can also cause a problem called ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. Though nowadays, of course, we have drugs, we have technology wherein we can handle all this. It's going to be safe for you. That, of course, is a responsibility of your treating gynecologist and infertility expert. But point is, you should be aware that, they will end up forming more eggs. And also sometimes we may have to tell you that, okay, we may end up picking up your eggs, but we are not going to transfer. That is, as I said, we have technology now to kind of retrieve your eggs, fertilize them, and cryopreserve. Cryopreserve is like freezing them.
Yeah.
They're going to be all good, but we will transfer inside your uterus at a later date. That in fact helps people with PCOD. Rather, not transferring in the same cycle and transferring later actually works better, gives you a better pregnancy rate.
So basically, when I can freeze my egg in maybe in my mid 20s, and whenever I feel that it is the right age, we can go through
That
this.
Anjali, of course, is another thing, but PCOD patients don't really have to do this. But
Okay.
as you said, if probably this is something called social egg freezing, what you just spoke of, like professional girls, they don't really want to settle down. They haven't found a good partner. They're aggressive with their careers. They don't want to marry, don't want to have a baby. So for
Yeah.
women like that, maybe when they're still, but point is that if you're too late in deciding to do a social egg freezing, then you may not have good quality of eggs. So you
Okay.
should obviously, if you're in your 30s, early 30s, prior to, 36 years of age, 35, 36 years of age, do take a decision. Okay. So
Mhm.
herein, as I said, you will be given injections, your ovaries will be prepared, then the eggs can be retrieved and cryopreserved. Because
Okay.
you may not having a partner, simply eggs can be cryopreserved. If you have a partner, you don't want to have a baby, so they make the embryo with the husband's sperm and then cryopreserve. So you can not
Okay.
only cryopreserve the embryo, you can cryopreserve the eggs also. So this is possible. We have all that technology now.
Okay.
Okay. And increased risk of pregnancy loss is also likely in PCOD patients. They are more likely to have miscarriages also. And certain problems can also arise if, let's say, the pregnancy continues. They are also going to be more prone to, them having diabetes while they are pregnant. So point is their pregnancies also will have to be handled with a lot of care.
Yeah.
So that is basically about PCOD. If we have any questions, or are we going to
Yeah.
take all questions at the end?
At the end, let's just, if we are going to move in onto our next segment, let's just start with the poll to have an idea. So I would really request the team, backend team, to launch the poll, and I would request attendees to actively participate in the same. Backend team, can we have the poll? Yeah. Not this one, the last poll for the evening. Just ending this poll. If you can share the last poll for the evening. I think there is a technical glitch. No worries, ma'am. You can continue. We'll be taking questions at the end only.
Okay, right. So let me just conclude by saying that, the PCOD
Okay.
segment, we conclude by
So,
saying that please never have any shortcuts in life. If you are a PCOD, please keep working on your exercise throughout, keep working on your diet throughout, and there are ways to handle all your problems. Don't really feel stigmatized. There is no need for you to have this label in your mind. Because there's just so many other girls like you, and not every girl is, facing big issue in life because of PCOD. So be positive, be proactive, and I'm sure it'll all be tackled well with your commitment and your doctor's help.
yeah,
So let's
sure.
move on to the second topic.
Ma'am, the team has launched the poll. Are you able to see the poll?
I can't see it.
Okay, let me just, we have launched it and we are just ending in it another 10 seconds. Let me just quickly read out the question. So, do you think even if you're doing fine, it is important to consult your gynecologist regularly, especially when you are in your early 40s? So, we'll be just ending poll in another 15 seconds. And the options are yes, no, can't say. We'll be sharing the result in another 10 seconds. Request the team to end the poll now and share the result. Okay. Ma'am, are you able to see the result?
Able to
Yeah,
see.
so I think 75% of the people think that it is important. I'm really frowned upon these 13% people who think that it is not like we can let it go. It's not necessary to see the gynecologist, and we have 11% saying can't say, like they are not bothered, chill. So just have your opinion on that, and we'll be starting with the next segment.
Well, as a doctor, I would always be telling you that please be aware of your health, because if you are kind of too complacent, you can be surprised by a few nasty things happening in life, and God forbid that happen for anybody. But point is, how can we ever predict unless we do regular checks and we are aware of what is happening in our bodies? Okay.
Yeah,
So definitely you should be proactive, and especially after you've hit your 40s. You have to be all the more careful.
definitely.
So let's get started with the second segment.
Yeah.
Okay. So after 40, life is another, life starts at 40 these days.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are actually still young, but yes, the body, the biological clock has a little different story to say. Your hormones will start showing some change there, and you can't take your body for granted. You have to be more proactive about being healthy, mentally, physically, emotionally, everything.
Yeah.
Although I am only going to dwell on your health aspects, but that goes without saying that for a holistic well-being, your mental health and emotional health is equally important, and therein comes the role of your families, your friends, your friend circle, the various hobbies that you pursue. So and obviously modern women are pretty much aware of it, but sometimes many a times we relegate ourselves to the back of things. We are running behind our careers, the family is important, children are important, but I guess if you wouldn't give yourself time, or you wouldn't be happy at the core, at the end of it, life is not going to seem very rosy to you, despite you doing everything for everybody. Okay, so self-love is what I propagate. Okay.
Mm. Definitely.
So especially women, once they touch this landmark, that's when they start realizing that you have to live life for yourself as well. So medically, what we're going to talk of is going to be important now. Many women would have completed their families by this time.
Yeah.
Okay, so or maybe they have one child and they want to have another one. Some may not have had even one child, so it depends. If probably you've completed your family, you would need some contraceptive method, and there are so many contraceptive methods available. Nobody wants an unnecessary pregnancy, nobody wants that kind of a hassle, so you should be following some kind of a contraception. We follow the cafeteria approach. That is, we give our patients the various options that are available, and it is for them to choose and for us to guide them based on their health condition. If they're not diabetic, they're not hypertensive. So based on all that, we help them and guide them to choose a good enough contraceptive method. To name a few, obviously we know the male partner uses condoms. There are condoms even for the female. Then you have oral contraceptive pills, intrauterine devices, injectable forms. Newer ones are vaginal rings, patches.
Yeah.
So there are so many that we have. If, of course, if the family is not completed and they're having issues about conceiving, we've already spoken of the assisted methods of, reproduction. That various techniques that we have are IUI, IVF, and all. So you can be helped based on what issue you're facing. Then there are lots of terms you would have heard from your neighbors, your mothers, maybe, so many times that they had a surgery, the uterus was removed. So all these things actually start happening in your late 30s or when you enter your 40s. Lots of, because your body, after all, has started showing some changes,
Yeah.
and these changes can sometimes, and maybe, as I said, you've already completed your families, and you don't really need, if the uterus is going to be having a problem, you may just say that, okay, I'm done with the function of having a uterus, and now this problem is coming. Do I really want to kind of spoil my life or the quality of life suffering this problem? So what the problems can be is what we're going to deal with. Abnormal uterine bleeding. Now what this means is that, again, there is some hormonal imbalance, and women start having very heavy periods sometimes. Heavy periods, prolonged periods, the periods don't stop. Okay, so that, of course, not only her quality of life, she will be impacted. She will become anemic. Okay, she'll feel tired, and obviously the day-to-day activities will be so difficult. She can also sometimes, it can be very embarrassing, obviously, at workplaces also. So this problem is called abnormal uterine bleeding. There are medicines to handle it, but sometimes even the medicines don't help. So nowadays we've got these, Mirena. Mirena is an IUCD, that is an intrauterine contraceptive device, which has got a progesterone loaded in it.
Okay.
So if this is inserted, this helps immensely.
Yeah.
So this is something that we as gynecologists are using a lot these days, because we don't ultimately see, if there is no other major issue, we don't want to remove the uterus of a woman by way of a surgery, because that, why should a patient be subjected to something as big as a surgery if there are other steps to help. So
Definitely.
first we usually start with tablets, medications. If that doesn't help, then as I said, we can help them with this intrauterine device called Mirena. There were so many other methods which had been explored before this, but I'm not really going to go and tell you any of those. But if at all this problem is not sorted out by conservative methods, and we have to do a surgery, surgery can either be done as an open surgery, that is through the abdomen. We make an incision and ultimately remove the uterus, or by way of laparoscopic. Now, what lots of people actually call laser. Now, there's no laser surgery. That is a misnomer. Even you people as laymen should never use this term. So say laparoscopic, which is minimally invasive. You make very tiny holes in the abdomen, and with only like, some three entry points or four maybe, we will kind of do the surgery and remove the diseased organ. Okay.
Okay.
So one thing is, in abnormal uterine bleeding, there is only the hormonal problem, nothing else. But there are other conditions also which can give you heavy bleeding. Fibroid uterus. Fibroid uterus means as this, this diagram where you're seeing so many funny round
Yeah.
growths. So these are basically, part of the uterus from the muscle layer in the uterus is called myometrium. So, okay. So now these, kind of, you have these outgrowths. This, they are, maybe you can call them a tumor, but they are not cancerous. Okay. They're just locally there within the uterus, either outside the uterus, inside, or within the, as I said, the muscle layer, the myometrium of the uterus. Okay. As you see, some are projecting out, some are inside, some are within the walls of the uterus. So depending upon, they can give rise to various symptoms. Sometimes it can only be a very heavy feeling in the abdomen. Some people can have very heavy bleeding. Some people can have, a problem with their urination. So different symptoms can be manifested. So if the fibroid is small, and it is not giving you any problem, then we're not really going to be too bothered about it, because lots of women can have a fibroid or two. But if the fibroid is big and it is causing you, heavy flow every month, you're bleeding heavily, and it is causing you big time cramps, and if the size is more than 10 centimeters, that is usually the cutoff we take, and then we may have to advise a surgery for the patient. But otherwise, if they're small and they're not causing a lot of symptoms, again, we can deal with by way of medications. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Then there is a condition called endometriosis. Endometriosis affects women not only in their 40s, it may impact them right from the time that they are young. Now, what this does, it causes you to have very painful periods. And why does this happen? Basically, you have the inner lining of the uterus. I told you every periods a woman is supposed to shed that. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes this similar to the inner lining of the uterus, this kind of goes to certain sites where it should not be. It goes, and the lining implants of the endometrium, they go and sit on the ovary or outside the fallopian tube, in the pouch of Douglas. Pouch of Douglas is a behind our uterus. Okay. So all this then ultimately it gives rise to very painful periods, or probably if you can have not only during periods will you have pain, you may have pain otherwise also. You will always be complaining of pain in the lower abdomen. Okay. And if you are sexually active, you're married, you may end up complaining of pain while you have intercourse. So because this disease process is also going to cause the various parts of the uterus to get stuck to one another, and also to the organs in the front and behind. So I've used a word called adhesions. The disease is a progressive one, and it causes numerous adhesions in and around the uterus. Okay. So these adhesions is what causes the pain.
Okay.
And progressive means that this disease is not going to stop. It will usually, if it starts with being, let's say, a milder form of the disease, it may progress and become a severe form of the disease. But not necessarily, again, that may be the case in all women. It may just be the case in few, and it may not really be the same for others. Okay. Now, endometriosis, again, can be handled by way of medication. And if it is really severe, we have to do a surgery. And endometriosis also contributes to infertility.
Okay.
in a big way. It really impacts the fertility potential. So women who are having endometriosis, they are usually advised that they should not delay childbearing. Okay.
Okay.
And also when you ask me this question of, social egg freezing,
Yeah.
women who are having endometriosis, and if they are career driven, even they can think of, freezing their eggs at the right time, because as it is, their egg quality will not be very good. And as I said, the condition is progressive, so it may worsen. So they also should be proactive in taking a decision. If they don't want to settle down and have a baby early in life, they can think of, because I was once, I happened to see a patient who is a severe case of endometriosis, and she thought she's never going to get married. Why? Because the endometriosis is so bad and she will probably never be able to have babies. I said, if you're young, why don't you, why think of this? Why not, talk with your family and tell them that, okay, I'm interested in getting my eggs cryopreserved. And
Yeah.
maybe, even if the disease progresses thereafter, okay,
Mhm.
you can still end up having your own biological child if you end up getting married, or
Yeah.
so as I said, we have a lot of advances in technology, and all disease situations can be handled. Only thing is that please be aware of your symptoms, approach your doctors on time, and obviously, get the right guidance. If you have a certain problem and you keep going to, let's say, a GP will not be able to help you as much as a gynecologist will. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have seen this many a times, that people have this. I'm not saying that it is a wrong um, policy or a wrong thing to do, because many a times small little things can be handled with by the GP. But if you are diagnosed with something which tells you the problem is big, then please don't procrastinate. Then please, be more active about approaching a gynecologist who's got the adequate qualification to help you with your problem.
Yeah.
Then adenomyosis. Adenomyosis is a condition. Again, this gives rise to, the uterus being uh, a bulky uterus, painful. So this more or less kind of is seen in this age group. It can be seen in younger women also.
Yeah.
And these women again can have problem with their conception. I'll not go too much into this. Then PID. What is PID? Now, many a times when women come with discharge, lots of women have eye discharge. That is again a very common thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So this discharge may be just a mild infection, but sometimes it may be an indication that there is a very strong infection which is there in the vagina, and from the vagina this infection can sometimes ascend upwards, go into the uterus via the tubes. It can in fact go and enter inside your abdomen.
Yeah.
So it can sometimes even cause your tubes to have a blockage. Okay, this infection can cause the tubes to have collection of pus. So when it can to the extent that it can lead to infertility. So whenever you have any vaginal discharge which is abnormal, which is foul smelling, and this should not be again ignored. And if it is persistent, and you sometimes many times, women don't even know this, that they have some problem with their tubes, because maybe they, when they were younger, they ignored these symptoms. Not only here, it's not always that maybe they ignored it, but some people may also be predisposed to it, that despite them taking treatment,
Yeah.
probably they end up having the tubes getting blocked, and various other hydrosalpinx or some condition of the tubes happening because of PID. PID is pelvic inflammatory disease,
Okay.
and the external sign that we see usually is basically vaginal discharge,
Discharge.
just
Okay.
foul smelling, which is itching you. So these can be the only symptoms that a patient may know. But if it is a bad one, as I said, with pus collection inside and all, she can have fever, she can have pain abdomen. That will also need her to get admitted. That is the other extreme. Okay.
Okay.
Then ovarian cysts. Lots of you have, I'm sure, would have, sometimes or the other gotten an ultrasound, and some cyst has come in your ultrasound. This is something very common. But again, cysts are of many types and various sizes, various, category of cysts according to us gynecologists. So if the cyst is just smaller than 5 centimeter, Okay, it is just a simple plain cyst. It has got no, I mean, again, being a little technical. If it has got septae inside, it has got a solid component, then we take it as, you know, we have to be very careful about following up such a cyst. But if it is only a simple cyst, you know, just a simple cyst with fluid collection, and it is less than 5 centimeters, we call it a functional cyst. That is, we don't really have to bother. It just happened maybe as a consequence of the ova that was released. And then there was fluid collection in the remaining follicle.
Yeah.
Okay. But if the cyst is larger, okay, and as I said, if they've got septae inside or it's got a solid component to it, then that may be an indicator to us that this is not a good looking cyst. It may be malignant. There may
Yeah.
be a chance that it can be a cancer. Then as a gynecologist, we are going to take the next steps and ask you to probably, you know, get a more investigations done. There are certain hormone tests, MRI or something that we may tell you. But the bottom line is that if you have a small cyst, less than 5 centimeter, not much to worry. But again, don't self-diagnose. Always with the guidance of your gynecologist. But if the cyst is larger than 5 centimeters, it will have to be followed up with you know, ultrasound. And if it is really bigger, like let's say 7, 8, 9, 10 centimeters, then it even may need a surgery. And surgery,
Okay.
usually nowadays we try and do a laparoscopic surgery to help most of our patients, because the recovery is faster,
Yeah.
only small 3-4 holes. So that is, but obviously that is a little more expensive. So patients who cannot afford a laparoscopic procedure, we will have to do an open procedure for them.
Yeah.
Then ectopic pregnancy. Now this is also something that lots of you young women should know about. Ectopic pregnancy, as the word says, ectopic means outside. So
Yeah.
outside of where it should be. Normally a pregnancy happens inside the uterus. Okay. But
Okay.
for some women, what happens is that the pregnancy will go and get attached to some place in the tube. As you can see in the diagram below, you know, either in the tube or in the ovary or even in the abdomen. Okay. So the various conditions that I told you, you know, endometriosis can make you prone to ectopic pregnancy, PID, if there was some infection in your tubes and it also went into your abdomen, all this will make you prone to an ectopic pregnancy. And sometimes there may be no such things. Sometimes, you know, because many a times what happens is nowadays we get a lot of girls who come to us for medical termination of pregnancy. Okay.
Okay.
So prior to giving any medical termination, we gynecologists always ask for an ultrasound. Why? Because of this very deadly situation, that if the uterus is not having the pregnancy, but the pregnancy is sitting in the tubes or it is somewhere in the abdomen, if we give you those abortive medicines, it
Hmm.
will be a big medical emergency. Okay, so
Yeah.
many times patients don't understand and they themselves go to the chemist and also buy it for themselves. And we
Yeah.
have seen so many times, you know, the patients, they, because what happens is that this pregnancy, it cannot sustain for longer. At about 5, 6 weeks or, you know, roughly around that time, because the tube is very thin.
Yeah.
The uterus ultimately expands when the pregnancy growth, it has got potential to expand, and it's got
Hmm.
thick walls. So nothing
Yeah.
is going to happen to the uterus. But if the pregnancy is in the tube, it is thin, it will ultimately rupture. And there's going to be a lot of blood in your tummy. This is called abdominal massive hemorrhage is going to happen. You end up seeing patients with 2-3 liters of blood in their abdomen and they're like almost dying. They come in shock to us. So this is something I would like most of you to know, that please be very aware whenever you you know, kind of skip your periods and you see a very thin line in the UPT test, that also is a worrisome sign. So again, as I said, please don't self-diagnose, please don't self-medicate. Even when you're taking something as simple as you know, a medical termination, please don't do it over the counter, because this might, you know, you might end up obviously you wouldn't know about this, but so many patients are careful also. They come to us, they don't really do this over the counter business, because as I said, this is a can be a major catastrophe. You can end up
Yeah.
losing the patient in no time. Even when we see a patient who comes to us with a ruptured ectopic, who's in shock, it's like a big time emergency. We just rush the patient to the OT, we arrange blood and everything, and we have to open very fast. Okay.
Understood. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is something I wanted you people to know. This, I mean, again, as I said, younger women can have it. Women in their 40s can also have it. Anybody can have an ectopic. So this is
Yeah.
again not age specific, but I wanted to touch on this topic. So hence I kind of brought it here, because unless you, and even if sometimes, women who have got sterilization done, when we were talking of the contraceptive methods, I skipped this point, that there's obviously you can go for permanent, methods of contraception, wherein you ligate the tubes, you close the tubes for a woman, and she, like it is considered a permanent method of sterilization or contraception.
Yeah.
So sometimes women who have had this procedure also can end up having an ectopic, because
Yeah.
they usually we tie the tube at a particular point. So maybe, the pregnancy has happened, and it's kind of, because this is not a fail, 100% accidental pregnancies despite sterilization happen. Okay, you would have heard of failed sterilizations, that, couples, despite them having had that, and they're still conceived. That can happen because there can be a recanalization. The tube can kind of form a connection again, despite us taking all due care. So in such cases, you may have a pregnancy happening in the uterus nicely also, but chances are that it can happen in the tube. That is very high. Okay. Then now the graver part is over. You must have thought, okay, so many horrible looking diagrams have been shown, so many problems. But then these are the problems that women do face. Now let's come to something that we will like hearing about. How can we improve our bone, skin, and hair health? Okay, that is something most of us women would, want to kind of look good the whole of our life, and why
Yeah.
not? But let's talk of the bone health first. Now, what happens is that till you're 40, the there is a very good balance of the bone formation and bone breakdown. But
Yeah.
once you reach 40, the breakdown is rapid, but the formation kind of diminishes gradually. So your bones are ultimately going to weaken, and this condition is called osteoporosis. And if you don't take due care, you will end up being very prone to fractures as you age even further.
Okay.
So it is very important that you do the following steps that I'm going to talk of. Make sure that you have a good intake of calcium. And how can you have a good intake of calcium? Take milk products. Okay. Although again, when we spoke of PCOD, we said don't take a lot of dairy and dairy. Okay. And
Yeah.
also there is another school of thought nowadays which says that dairy is not too good. But still, I mean, you can't really say that you can stop everything. But that being, of course, because we are being given all this steroid injected milk and stuff, so I guess that also has some detrimental role to play. But traditionally speaking, milk has calcium. Your yogurt will give you calcium. Okay. Then your green leafy vegetables, spinach, broccoli, kale, all this will have calcium. Okay. Your nuts, oil seeds, pulses, rajma,
Yeah.
ragi, all this is going to be helpful with giving you a good, calcium content. And vitamin D. Vitamin D is something that you cannot get from food. Usually, most of us are vitamin D deficient. If you see our population, a big number is vitamin D deficient. And vitamin D has got a major role in multiple body functions. Okay, so it is very, very vital. So if you can, you have to actually soak up the sun on most
Yeah.
days for 20-30 minutes direct sun, which is actually practically not possible in today's times. Though I guess now lockdown, in fact, I've seen so many of us do outdoors more, going out to the parks and doing those picnics, which we
Yeah.
never did before. But so maybe
Yeah.
in a way, this change in lifestyle because of corona is actually good. We
Yeah.
kind of getting back to nature, getting back to the old ways. So
Yeah.
this is important for you to get your dose of vitamin D. If not, and if you're deficient, you should definitely take a course of your vitamin D sachets or capsules, be able to use your calcium. If you're vitamin D deficient, you'll not be able to use the calcium. Okay, so
Okay.
this goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
Then you should always have some kind of exercise. If you exercise well, you will have good bone health. So there should be some routine of either walking, jogging, climbing stairs.
Yeah.
Health, 22.5 to 4.5 milligram per deciliter, and vitamin D 600 IU.
Okay.
Now, hair loss. What are the causes? Stress. Urbanization has caused a lot of stress. Okay, And we women are always complaining, I'm losing hair, and you know, my hair used to be so nice. Well, for me, my hair has always been very thin, and
Mhm.
but yes, stress has added to the hair loss.
Yeah.
So you know, when I always say, you know, medicine caused me to lose my hair when I,
Okay.
but I
But
wonder.
this happens. This happens. Medicines do get us lose our hair. Like I
No,
have
medicine in the
experienced.
sense, what I meant was me doing MBBS and stuff. Okay, certain medicines do.
Anyway, in any way, some medicines do have
Some
this effect.
medicines
My
do.
mother has experienced this.
Yes, yes, you're right. So stress is a big time contributor in hair loss. Then obviously hormonal problems. We just spoke of PCOD. That has a role to play. And if you probably are sick, you know, you've just recovered from some malaria or whatever, some kind of an infection, then again you will have hair loss. Or if you already have some chronic illnesses, you know, wherein you probably have some kind of a diabetes or something which has taken a toll on your health, so that also will have an impact. If you're not taking a good diet, you go on, you know, dieting, crash diets, or you are protein deficient, you will again have hair loss. And vitamin deficiency, mineral deficiency, all this will contribute. Okay,
Yeah.
so the lower your stress levels, maintain a good hydration. Good hydration is good not only for hair, also for skin. Okay, and both your skin and hair, you need you to have a lot of, again, green veggies, leafy vegetables, fruits. Because why? Because they're rich in antioxidants, they're rich in vitamins, they're rich in minerals. So
Yeah.
that is why, you know, this helps.
Yeah.
Obviously, as I said, as we spoke of for the PCOD patients, also I would say that as you increase in age, your calorie intake actually needs to kind of be a little less than before. A young woman needs more calories. As you increase in age, you have to cut down on your calories. So, but cutting down on calories doesn't mean that you compromise the quality. So you try and diminish the carbs, but increase the protein. If you do that, again, it's going to have a good effect on your skin and hair. Okay, and adequate sleep. Take that is very important for you to have good skin and hair health and general good health as well. Okay, and of course, if despite this you have hair loss, then obviously you need to meet a dermatologist. Now let's talk of what medical issues can happen once you enter your 40s, especially for people who've got a family history. Okay, those people should be all the more careful. If your father or your mother is a diabetic, a hypertensive, hypothyroid patient, you are more likely to end up becoming one yourself. Even if not, again, as I said, the stress, the urbanization, the modern day lifestyle, with, you know, the various careers, you name it, maybe the IT professionals, the multinationals, all of us are driven by so much, you know, so many targets we got to achieve in life, professionally, personally. So all this takes a toll. And in diabetes, hypertension, your lipid profile goes haywire. You can end up having coronary artery disease, thyroid problems. So regular checks, I think all of us become much more, you know, aware. We have lots of people in our families, even your friend circle, who probably get regular blood tests done annually, you know, their health checks done. So this is very important. And also similarly, you know, what is important is that some tests that you should know about: CBC, TSH is for your thyroid, CBC is just knowing about your blood picture,
Yeah.
LFT is for your liver, KFT for your kidneys, lipid profile is for your basically cholesterols. Okay,
Okay.
and blood sugar levels you should know. Get your BP checked on time. Eye checks are important. Again, some people can end up having glaucoma or some other issue with their eyesight or whatever. So regular checks with your doctors post 40 is very important.
Yeah.
And as a gynecologist, obviously you will, I will also suggest that, we'll come to that, you need to be screening yourself for certain cancers. So we will come to that later. Okay, then sexual health after 40. Now, as I said, you know, after 40, there'll be certain hormonal changes happening in the body. So, but not, this is not a universal rule that all women will kind of see a decline in their sex desire, but some
Yeah.
women may. So this is going to be variable. So if, however, you have problems which can be like inadequate lubrication during the fat, and some may complain of reduced desire. So if these problems are there, then definitely meet your gynecologist, discuss with her. You can be helped with lots of options. There are creams, there are certain medications we can give you, and newer modalities have come up. Lasers are there to help restore vaginal health. There are certain platelet-rich plasma therapies which have come in. So this also because women may, start showing some changes, and because to have a good married life, um good marital harmony, this is also an important aspect. So this should not be ignored. And if you have issues, please approach your gynecologist for the same.
Yeah.
Then cancer screening. This is again something very important. Every woman should focus on post she enters her 40. And like for medical disorders, if you have a family history, please be all the more proactive and at an earlier age. Okay. So even like your mid 30s itself, you can start getting yourself checked. Now, what are the main cancers that affects a woman? First and foremost is actually CA breast, cancer breast. Then
Yeah.
is cancer cervix, cancer endometrium, cancer ovary. So these are the four main gynecological cancers that can affect a woman. Now, what all steps can you take to handle cancer cervix? It is one of the most, treatable cancers actually. Only thing is that in our country, we are very, very lax about doing our health checks, and more so with the gynae health checks, the screening of these cancers. But our agenda now is that we all gynecologists have actually decided to, kind of eliminate cancer cervix. The percentage is still as high as 22 to 23% amongst cancers in women, which is again not a small figure. So, what can be done? Now, as young girls, you can be given vaccination. There is a vaccination that is available. It has got some 3 doses to it.
Yeah.
Ideal age of getting the vaccine is, when the girl is just about 10 to 11 years till 25 to 26 years of age. Okay. That is so that by the time a woman starts her sexual activity, she already has the antibodies in her. And why do you get this cancer? Because per se, because of the sexual activity, there is a virus called human papilloma virus, HPV. Okay. This goes and sits inside your cells of the cervix, and it brings about certain changes. But this is a very gradual change. It takes years and years and years to ultimately transform into a cancer. So another beautiful part about cancer cervix is that if you get your pap smears done on time, pap smear is just a very small, simple OPD testing, okay? Like I'm showing you in the figure, this is the mouth of the cervix and we are just making a smear from that. It is not painful. It is a very simple procedure. So we just kind of make this smear put, on a slide and we send it for lab testing. So this should be done every 3 years once you're sexually active till the age of 65. So if this all, keeps coming normal, then you don't have anything to worry. But at any point of time that comes to be abnormal, you can kind of, do the next steps. And in case there is anything abnormal, there are very minor surgeries which can control the disease right at that stage.
Yeah.
But if you were not knowing this, you were not doing pap smear, it will be going, it will keep progressing. And ultimately, by the time you get to know, it is probably a widespread disease. It's not only there in your cervix, it is spread to the other parts of the uterus. It's gone to so many, it is kind of become, spread, we call it metastasis. It's gone to other organs also.
Yeah.
So, but it is so easily treatable and you can kind of diagnose it so early if you are just regular with your pap smears. So, I really, really want to stress on this point. All you women who are probably mostly the younger generation would be logged on here, but please spread a word to your mothers, to your aunts that they should definitely, definitely go and get their pap screening done. Because we just don't know. We cannot look at a person's face and tell them, okay, you are going to have a cancer cervix. No, we can't. So
Yeah.
if you are becoming aware of the fact that you have to get your blood test done so that you don't develop or you get to know about your hypertension or your diabetes early, so why not the same for this? Because it is still one of the leading causes of deaths in women.
Yeah.
And why should it not be helped if it is so easily preventable? Okay. So
Yeah.
please do spread a word about this, that pap smear. And if you have got young girls who, your daughters, sisters, all you women here who are in that age group, please get your vaccination done. So it's a course of 0, 1, 6, one given at the starting, then vaccine 1 month later, and the third dose 6 months later.
Okay.
Then let's go to cancer breast. Cancer breast, again, this is actually the leading cancer in women. Again, it is very easily, you can pick it up very easily. All women should make a habit of palpating their breasts on their own. You know, is any hard nodular feel that you get, or there is a altered appearance in your breast, this is called self breast examination. So when any woman comes to me and she has got some complaint, or even like she's in her 40s, I do try and tell them or teach them this. So again, I would tell you all women here that you have women, older women, please ask them to do a self breast exam and again meet a gynecologist. Because again, the earlier that we catch this disease, okay, it's going to be better for the patient. If it is too early, we can just do a very local surgery and that's it. It's called a lumpectomy. But if it is widespread, we'll have to remove the entire breast. Or if it is even more, it would have spread. We'll have to give them chemotherapy, we'll have to give them radiation. So imagine, these cancers are like, obviously it is not a small thing. Cancers mean you might end up losing your life, and you wouldn't want that for anyone in your family. So cell breast examination is the first step. Annual mammography after 40 years of age. Okay. And if it is a younger woman, younger than 40, and she's got some breast problem, some lump or something, then we advise an ultrasound. Younger breasts will be better, assessed by way of an ultrasound.
Yeah.
Then cancer endometrium. What is cancer endometrium? It's the lining of the uterus. Now that can also develop a cancer. This usually will give rise to some symptom. You will have either very heavy flow or some kind of bleeding in between the periods or something. But again, as I said, lots of cancer just stump you. So better to be proactive. So after you're 40, every maybe 2 years, you can get a pelvic ultrasound done, wherein the ultrasound helps you to look at the uterus lining, the ovaries. The ovarian cancer is the most dangerous. It gives it's insidious. It doesn't give you any symptoms for a very long time. It is just sitting there silently growing, and it may give rise to symptoms very late, after it's really kind of become big and it's spread. So and symptoms are very vague. You will probably complain of acidity symptoms, that I'm feeling full, I'm feeling a heaviness, which you may ignore otherwise. So how will you get to know? Many a times, it is how this happens. By the time a cancer ovary is or a cancer in the ovary is diagnosed, it is already kind of spread quite a bit. So my basic target of talking about the cancers is that if you're proactive in screening and the regular checks are done, these deadly tumors or these deadly malignancies, they can be tackled well before they become sinister, they become really life-threatening.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is all from me, and now I'm open to all questions that you may have to ask me.
Yeah, so we had a wonderful presentation from ma'am, and our chat box has flourished with the question. So we have time constraint as well, and ma'am, you must be tired too. You're speaking for so long. So we'll be taking few questions only. It's been an insightful session indeed. So let me just quickly get on to the questions. So okay, so first question I'm seeing is, what is your opinion on seed cycling, ma'am? Can we put everyone with seed cycling with PCOS to regularize the hormones?
Seed cycling?
Yeah, seed cycling they have asked.
I
I think they haven't put if you're still here, just request you to put the question in a proper form so that we can answer it. Meanwhile,
seed
jumping
cycling
on to
is
the
good. Do they mean that's using a cycle for exercising? Is what they mean?
So you have to be clear. Please post your question again and
I
we'll
think that's
answer
what
it.
they're trying to say, that the static cycle that we have as an exercising equipment, can that help? I think that's what they're trying to ask. But
That's what I also think the same. Yeah.
but if that is what they mean to ask, that yes, any form of exercise is
Yeah.
going to be good. But I would always say have a combination of exercises, ones that kind of, as I had mentioned, moves your major muscle groups. Okay.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
static cycling would again, kind of just be using your lower limbs. Okay.
Okay.
So Probably you can use that, but maybe also combine some other forms of exercise with that.
Okay. Vijay Lakshmi has asked reasons for missing periods for 2 to 3 months at 45 years and how to treat it, or should we consider it as a common symptom during menopause?
Well, it can be that you are kind of going towards your menopause, but again, you can't just sit on it, approach your doctor, because what we look at is that, as I told you, we will see that, the lining of your uterus. If the lining is thin, okay, that means that your hormonal supply is lowering. But if there is a thickening of the lining, which means that you still have good amount of hormones, but probably there is some abnormality, in the hormonal balance, and hence you're not had your periods. Because the average age of menopause can be anything between 45 to 55. And so not necessarily that if you're nearing 45, it is only menopause, but can be. So as I said, the doctor will tell you, she will also probably send you know, um, a test called FSH if she is doubtful, that, or you're probably having also symptoms like hot flushes and you feel, that you're irritable. So she will obviously ask you those leading questions in the clinic. Then she will send this particular test. If the FSH is high, and also as I said in the ultrasound, the lining appears to be thin, then maybe you are approaching menopause or you're already menopausal. But if the lining is thick, okay, and the FSH comes out to be normal, then maybe it is just some hormonal imbalance, and probably the next time that you have bleeding, it may just be too heavy.
Yeah.
So it can be, either of these two conditions.
Yeah, sure. So now Dr. Sarthak Trivedi has asked, what is the reason for changes in dates in monthly periods?
See, changes in dates per se is not an abnormality. Any woman who has a period of, an interval of 20 days to about 45 days, we don't really consider that abnormal. So
Yeah,
some women, but if the cycle is shorter than 20 days or longer than 45 days, then definitely you need to investigate that. But if you say, that every time, that it came on the 11th and next time it comes like, let's say on the 13th or the 14th, oh, it got delayed by 2 3 days. No, that's okay.
yeah,
Don't, it never, our bodies are not so precise that, that it should be not, doesn't work on clockwork precision. You can
yeah,
have that variation because the hormones can go a little up down, and your rhythm of sleeping, your stress pattern, so many things come into play. So
sure.
abnormality is only if less than 20 days is the interval, or more than 45 days of interval
Yeah,
between the two
sure.
periods.
So now Sarabdeep Kaur has asked, ma'am, what a woman should expect at the age of 40? I think it's a very interesting and diversified question. What to expect when you're 40?
Expect is like expect in what manner is she's trying to ask me. Expect there'll be certain changes in your body. You have to be more, as I had at the very start said, you can't take your body for granted now.
Yeah,
Your skin, your hair, everything needs care. You have to have some exercise regime. You will start piling weight if you're
yeah,
not careful with your diet, you're not careful with your, because definitely the hormones are going to show some changes because the ovarian function is declining. You're born with a certain amount of uh, follicles, okay,
yeah,
the eggs, and that for a woman diminishes as she progresses in age.
yeah,
And the downfall is rather rapid after the age of 35.
yeah,
Because, and there is where the female hormones come from. So if the female hormones are going to kind of start decreasing, it will start showing an effect on your body also. So
definitely.
point is, have a healthy lifestyle, productive life, eat well, drink well, have lots of fluids, water, and you should be good. And of course, if you have problems, then you should tackle them at the earliest.
Definitely. So now, can 43 years old women having hypothyroid can have irregular periods? Any treatment and investigation modalities?
Definitely 43 or any age can have a thyroid problem. Thyroid
Hmm.
problem is not, limited by the age group. So
Yeah.
if when the thyroid becomes abnormal, you, have to, entire thyroid profile has to be done. And usually we also send a prolactin with it because that's got a correlation with thyroid. And if the levels are higher, like for women who are wanting to conceive or while they're pregnant, there is a different cutoff. But for
Yeah.
women who that is not the agenda, the cutoff we usually take is that TSH more than 10 has to be treated. So based on how abnormal their report is, they will have to be treated.
Yeah. Sure, ma'am. I think we have given you
And
an
treatment
answer.
modality, of course, we start them on some, medication. There
Yeah.
are various medications in the market, so they have to be started on that. And usually, hypothyroidism is what impacts most women. Hyperthyroidism is also another entity. So we
Mhm.
first have to see what is the problem really, because thyroid is a very vague term. So either it is hypothyroidism or it is hyperthyroidism. So accordingly, whatever it is, we diagnose and then treat.
Okay. So let's just taking the last question for the day. So Divya has asked, it is normal for a 15-year-old girl to have a periods on alternate months only for a year.
Yes, quite likely because in the first 2 to 3 years of her attaining menarche, that is, menarche means the first start of her periods. Her
Yeah.
system, her entire system, hypothalamic pituitary axis, that is, our hormones are controlled by from our central nervous system. Okay, so we've got certain glands there, so they secrete the regulatory hormones, and then ultimately the message reaches our ovaries. So
Yeah.
right, the entire system is actually maturing, so sometimes they can have very erratic cycles initially. So for the
Yeah.
first 2 to 3 years, if the period is kind of late, or it
Mhm.
is sometimes some girls also have very heavy bleeding when they are, they just started their periods. So it's called puberty menorrhagia. So all these things are likely because the system is still maturing. So we don't really make it too much of a, you know, issue there, and it can just be the mother can be counseled about it. But
Mhm.
yes, if this continues, and especially continues after she's like into her 16 or if she's 18 years of age, and still if that pattern continues every 2 months, then definitely, as I said, this is maybe the first sign. You'll have to see. I mean, she might be just, a PCOD patient. So, but yes, if this is a younger patient, she's just 2 through 3 years post her menarche, then we will not be too worried.
Definitely. Sure, ma'am. So, on that note, I would really like to let's just end this insightful webinar. So, I would like to extend my thanks to our esteemed partner, MedLife, and to you, ma'am, for giving us such an insightful experience. I, after this session, many taboos has been broken by you, and I am going to definitely consult you for many things going forward. And to the
Actually,
participants, to
I wouldn't really want you to have any of, but yes, you're more than welcome. Any
yeah,
constructive.
definitely, definitely. Because I had many misconceptions, and you have taught me and particularly every woman who have attended this webinar, so many things about their own body and stigma attached to PCOD. So I think it has been an insightful webinar. Now, to attendees, I would really request you to follow Ticket to Your Network for updates and on further webinars we are having in this month and going forward. And don't forget to use your coupon, which is Ticket 18, while you are making any purchase from MedLife. Now, to the attendees, if you want to have a direct consultation from Dr. Meenu Ahuja, you can book an appointment and you can call on the number reflecting on your screens. It is 966-791-4646. So, great session, ma'am. Again, thank
So
you.
much. I would actually like to extend a thanks to you guys, you and Anjali, Praneeth, your team. You always have worked very hard around the entire thing. And MedLife, of course, has, I think, helped a lot with advertising on Instagram and the various social media platforms. So thank you so much. I think the agenda is basically you are a medium and we have to dispel certain misconceptions to the general population about various diseases or rather conditions.
Yeah.
And because many a times, what happens is that our patients don't really end up reaching the right speciality for a certain problem, the right doctors. So
Yeah.
yes, and also they should be aware. So agenda is to increase their awareness and telling them when and how to kind of seek help. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for having me on board as well.
Yeah.
Hope it
So
has helped a lot of
everyone, do join us again in the next webinar, which is on next Sunday. And till then, have a happy new year and be safe, everyone. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
ma'am, again.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Good night.